Chapter 1. The Ice King. Ethan Blackwood was the definition of power. At 32, he stood at the top of the corporate world, the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, a tech giant that commanded the attention of millions. His reputation was flawless, calculated, ruthless, and emotionless. The media often described him as the cold, unreachable Ice King, a man with no patience for weakness. He had built his empire with hard work, strategic mind games, and unyielding precision, and the world admired him for it. But beneath his icy exterior, there were secrets no one knew. Adrian Hart, on the other hand, was a man of warmth and laughter, the exact opposite of his husband, Ethan. As an alpha, Adrian was used to being in control, but with Ethan, he had surrendered to something far more powerful: his heart. Their marriage, once a product of a business arrangement, had grown into something real, something deeper. But no one knew that. To the outside world, they were still just a perfect power couple, the cold CEO and the charming alpha businessman. Behind closed doors, however, Ethan was a completely different person. Adrian smiled to himself as he walked into the lavish penthouse they called home, the soft scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Ethan sat at the kitchen counter, his back turned, gazing out the expansive windows at the city below. His black suit was as perfectly tailored as always, the sharpness of his posture almost unsettling. He looked like the type of man who had everything under control, and in many ways, he did. But then Ethan turned, his expression softening when he saw Adrian. For a split second, the cold CEO vanished, replaced by the man who had captured Adrian's heart. "Adrian, you're late," Ethan said, his voice calm, but with a hint of something deeper, something possessive. Adrian raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "Am I? I thought I was just in time to make your day a little more interesting." Ethan's lips twitched in a barely there smile. "Always trying to make me forget my work, huh?" Adrian laughed, taking a seat next to him at the counter. "It's not hard, you know. You just need to stop hiding behind that mask. I know the real you, Ethan." Ethan glanced at him, his gaze piercing. "And you're the only one who does," he said quietly. "Don't forget that." For a moment the room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging between them. Adrian could feel the possessiveness in Ethan's tone, something that never failed to send a thrill through him. Ethan was always so controlled, always so distant from the world, but with Adrian he let himself be vulnerable. Adrian reached out, gently placing his hand on Ethan's. "I know, and I'm not going anywhere." Ethan's eyes softened for a fraction of a second before he masked his emotions once again. He leaned in, brushing his lips against Adrian's cheek. "Don't make me say it, but I need you more than you think." Adrian smiled, the warmth in his chest spreading. "You don't need to say it, Ethan. I already know." Just as Adrian leaned in to kiss him, the sound of a phone buzzing interrupted them. Ethan stiffened, pulling away, and his eyes darkened as he glanced at the screen. His public persona quickly slipped back into place. "Another business call," Ethan muttered. "I'll be in the study." Adrian watched him go, a soft smile on his face. Ethan Blackwood might be the world's most feared CEO, but behind those closed doors he was just a man who loved fiercely. And Adrian Hart was the lucky one who got to see that side of him. But little did Adrian know the world would soon learn that Ethan's cold demeanor was just a mask for the man who would do anything to protect him and their future. Chapter 2. The Soft Side. Ethan's study was as cold and imposing as the man himself. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes and various business accolades. The large polished desk at the center was a symbol of authority. Yet despite its grandeur, there was something about it that felt oddly distant, as if the room existed for no one but the man who controlled everything within it. Adrian leaned against the doorframe, watching as Ethan hunched over papers, a stern look on his face. The CEO was deep in thought, tapping his pen against the desk in a rhythmic, almost methodical way. "Need some help?" Adrian asked, stepping into the room. Ethan didn't immediately respond, the clicking of his pen louder than anything Adrian had said. A silence passed between them. Adrian moved closer, his feet soft against the rug. "I'm fine," Ethan finally muttered, glancing up briefly before returning his attention to the papers. Adrian smirked, tilting his head. "You know, you could just let go for once. Take a break." Ethan's eyes flickered toward Adrian, the familiar ice in his gaze softening, if only for a moment. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his messy black hair. "I don't have time for breaks, Adrian." You always say that, Adrian replied, walking over and leaning down to press a kiss to Ethan's temple. You're not some machine, you know. Ethan stiffened for a second, then sighed, his shoulders relaxing as Adrian's lips lingered. I don't have a choice, he murmured, his voice quiet. Everything depends on me. Adrian sat down in the chair opposite him, looking across the desk. I know, but sometimes you need to let me be your escape. There was a brief pause before Ethan finally set the papers aside. His hand reached across the desk, brushing against Adrian's fingers. His touch was tentative, unsure, as if unsure of how to be in the space between them, this quiet intimacy. Adrian smiled softly, intertwining their fingers. You're not alone, Ethan. I'm right here. The moment passed, but something shifted in Ethan's eyes. There was a vulnerability there, one that only Adrian had ever been able to see. It was strange to see a man so powerful, so used to controlling everything around him, surrendering in this way. But with Adrian, Ethan couldn't help himself. Without a word, Ethan stood up, walking around the desk and toward Adrian. He pulled him into a tight embrace, his arms wrapping around Adrian's waist with a force that was almost desperate. Adrian chuckled softly, running his hands through Ethan's hair, holding him close. I can't focus on work right now, can I? Ethan murmured against Adrian's neck. Adrian grinned, his voice teasing. You never can when I'm around. Ethan pulled back just enough to look at Adrian's face, his eyes dark with something that Adrian couldn't quite place. His lips parted as if to say something, but instead he simply kissed Adrian, deeply and possessively. For a moment, the world outside disappeared. The cold, unyielding CEO became the man who craved Adrian's touch, who needed his warmth. Adrian could feel the shift in Ethan. This was not the man the world saw. This was the Ethan who had allowed him into his heart. When the kiss ended, Ethan rested his forehead against Adrian's, his voice barely above a whisper. You make me forget everything. Adrian smiled, holding Ethan tighter. And that's what I'm here for. To make sure you remember what's really important. Ethan's grip tightened ever so slightly, and for the first time that evening, Adrian noticed the hint of possessiveness in his husband's eyes. You're mine, Adrian, Ethan said quietly, his voice low, almost dangerous, and I won't let anyone take you from me. Adrian's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if it was the way Ethan said it or the intensity in his gaze, but it was as if Ethan had just claimed him all over again. He kissed Ethan softly, soothing the tension in his body before pulling back and meeting his gaze. I'm yours, Adrian said, his voice firm, matching the intensity. Always. Ethan's lips curled into a rare, gentle smile, the Ice King thawing in Adrian's embrace. For now, that was enough. Being together, in this quiet moment, where nothing else mattered. As the evening wore on, Ethan reluctantly returned to his work, but not before asking Adrian to stay by his side. And though Adrian didn't mind the long hours, he knew something had changed that night. He had seen a side of Ethan that no one else could. It was the side of a man who, despite being untouchable to the world, was deeply, irrevocably, and helplessly in love with him. Chapter 3: A New Life. Adrian sat in the cozy corner of their bedroom, his fingers lightly tracing the fabric of the soft quilt. Ethan was pacing back and forth across the room, his brow furrowed in concentration as he read over the latest test results. Adrian had known for weeks, but seeing Ethan's reaction to the news still felt surreal. Ethan, you've been reading that report for the past hour, Adrian said with a soft laugh, lifting his gaze to meet his husband's eyes. You're going to wear it out. Ethan's sharp gaze met his for a moment, then softened. I need to be sure. There's no room for error here, Adrian. His voice was quieter now, almost tender. Adrian smiled, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Ethan Blackwood, the man who commanded respect and fear from anyone who crossed his path, was now completely focused on the little life growing inside him. Their baby, a child that would be something extraordinary, something rare. Ethan was an enigma, one of the few in the world with the ability to bond with alphas in a way that created special alphas. Children born with unique gifts. Adrian, an alpha himself, had never imagined they would be the ones to defy nature like this. But here they were, about to embark on a journey that would forever change their lives. I'm going to be the best father, Ethan murmured as he walked over to Adrian, kneeling beside the chair where his husband sat. His hands gently cradled Adrian's face, and there was an unspoken promise in his eyes. "You're going to be the best mother, too." Adrian leaned into Ethan's touch, smiling softly. "I know we will. Together." Ethan's hand lingered on his cheek for a moment longer before he leaned in and kissed him. It was a kiss full of longing, full of tenderness, as if both of them were trying to reassure each other that everything was going to be okay. As the kiss deepened, Ethan's hands roamed to Adrian's waist, pulling him closer. Adrian could feel the heat of Ethan's body against his, the possessiveness that seemed to radiate from him in waves. Ethan's desire wasn't just physical, it was emotional. An overwhelming need to protect Adrian and their future child. When they finally pulled away, Ethan's forehead rested against Adrian's. His voice was low, rough with emotion. "I won't let anything happen to you. To our baby, no one will take you from me." Adrian's heart skipped at the intensity of Ethan's words. He had always known how protective his husband could be, but this was something deeper. It was a possessiveness that was all-encompassing. A force that left no room for doubt. Ethan needed them, craved their presence in a way that was almost primal. "I'm not going anywhere, Ethan," Adrian whispered, his hands gently gripping Ethan's shirt. "I'm right here, always." Ethan's eyes softened, and he pressed another kiss to Adrian's lips, this time slow and sweet, as if savoring the moment. Adrian melted into the kiss, his body relaxing as Ethan's arms tightened around him. They were a family now. Later that evening, after a quiet dinner and soft conversation, Adrian found himself curled up next to Ethan on the couch, their bodies wrapped in each other's warmth. Ethan had been unusually quiet, his hand resting on Adrian's stomach in a protective gesture. Adrian could feel the subtle shift in Ethan's demeanor, the way his protective instincts had kicked into high gear now that they were expecting a child. "Have you thought about names?" Adrian asked, breaking the silence. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he traced circles on Adrian's stomach with his thumb, his gaze fixed on the spot where their child grew. "I've been thinking about it," he finally said, his voice soft and contemplative. Adrian smiled, resting his head against Ethan's shoulder. "Any ideas?" Ethan paused before speaking, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want our child to have a name that means strength. A name that they can carry with pride, just like you carry my heart." Adrian's chest fluttered at Ethan's words. He had never expected such tenderness from the man who had been so emotionally guarded. Ethan Blackwood had always been a man of control, a man of power, but here, in their home with Adrian, he was raw. "Then we'll find the perfect name," Adrian said softly, his fingers grazing over Ethan's hand. "One that reflects everything we are." Ethan's lips brushed the top of Adrian's head as he held him even closer. "I'll protect you, Adrian. I'll protect our family. No one will ever take us from each other." Adrian smiled softly, his heart swelling with love and devotion. He had always known that Ethan's love for him ran deep, but now, hearing those words, he understood just how much Ethan needed him, how much he needed them both. "You have me, Ethan. Always." The possessiveness in Ethan's gaze was undeniable, but so was the love. It was a fierce, passionate love that knew no boundaries, a love that would protect them through anything. As they sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, a sense of peace washed over Adrian. The world outside could think what it wanted about the untouchable CEO and his alpha husband, but here in their quiet home, it didn't matter. They had each other, and soon they would have a family. And nothing in this world would ever take that from them. Chapter 4: Public versus Private. Ethan Blackwood rarely indulged in public appearances outside of business. The world knew him as the Ice King, a man who shunned emotional connections and thrived on absolute control. He was untouchable, or so everyone thought. But tonight was different. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks as he stood in front of the mirror, his reflection glowing in the soft light of their penthouse bedroom. The gala was a high-profile charity event hosted by Blackwood Enterprises, and attendance was non-negotiable for both of them. "You look stunning," Ethan said from behind him, his voice a low rumble. Adrian turned, a smirk tugging at his lips. Ethan stood there, impeccably dressed in a black tuxedo, his sharp features softened by the faintest trace of affection in his gaze. Adrian was one of the few people who could bring that softness out of him. Stunning enough to distract you? Adrian teased. Ethan stepped closer, his hand slipping around Adrian's waist. You always distract me, he murmured, his lips brushing against Adrian's ear. But tonight I need to make sure everyone knows you're mine. Adrian chuckled, turning to face him fully. They already know that, Ethan. Or have you been too busy glaring at every alpha who so much as glances at me? Ethan's jaw tightened slightly, and Adrian couldn't help but laugh at how transparent his husband could be when it came to his possessiveness. Let them look, Ethan said, his voice dropping. They can admire from a distance, but no one touches what's mine. Adrian's heart skipped at the intensity of Ethan's tone. He reached up, cupping Ethan's cheek. I'm yours, Ethan. Always. Ethan leaned into the touch, his eyes softening. Good, let's make sure they remember that tonight. The gala was as extravagant as Adrian had expected. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their light casting a warm glow over the room. Guests dressed in their finest mingled, sipping champagne and exchanging pleasantries. Ethan and Adrian's entrance was met with the usual flurry of attention. Cameras flashed as reporters jostled for a chance to capture the elusive CEO and his equally captivating husband. Ethan's arm rested protectively on Adrian's lower back, guiding him through the crowd with quiet authority. Adrian could feel the weight of every gaze on them, but he remained calm, his confidence unwavering. He had grown used to being in the public eye alongside Ethan, though he couldn't deny that his husband's subtle possessiveness always made these events more interesting. As they moved through the room, Ethan's sharp gaze scanned their surroundings, his body language exuding control. But every now and then, his focus would shift to Adrian, his expression softening just enough to reveal the man beneath the mask. The evening progressed smoothly until a familiar voice called out from the crowd. Adrian, it's been ages! Adrian turned to see an old friend approaching, a tall, charming alpha who had once been a close acquaintance. Ethan's grip on Adrian's waist tightened imperceptibly, but Adrian felt it nonetheless. Mark, it's good to see you, Adrian said warmly, extending a hand. Mark's eyes flicked to Ethan briefly before focusing back on Adrian. I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. Still as radiant as ever, I see. Ethan's jaw clenched, and Adrian could practically feel the tension radiating off him. Adrian is even more radiant now, isn't he? Ethan interjected smoothly, his tone polite but with a dangerous edge. Marriage does that to people. Mark blinked, clearly caught off guard by Ethan's sudden intervention. Of course, he said quickly, offering a strained smile. Adrian placed a calming hand on Ethan's chest, looking up at him with a soft smile. Ethan, you remember Mark, don't you? He's an old friend. Ethan's gaze didn't waver as he met Mark's eyes. I do, and I'm sure he remembers that Adrian is now my husband. Mark raised his hands in mock surrender. Of course, Mr. Blackwood, no offense intended. Ethan's lips curled into a faint smile, though his eyes remained icy. None taken. Enjoy the evening. As Mark disappeared into the crowd, Adrian turned back to Ethan, a knowing smile on his face. You really don't like sharing, do you? Ethan's arm tightened around him, pulling him closer. Not when it comes to you. I meant what I said, Adrian. You're mine. Adrian laughed softly, resting his head against Ethan's shoulder. And you're mine, Ethan. You don't have to prove it to anyone. Ethan kissed Adrian's temple, his possessiveness melting into something warmer, something tender. I know, but I'll remind them anyway. For the rest of the evening, Ethan's focus never strayed far from Adrian. The world might have seen the cold, untouchable CEO, but Adrian knew the truth. Beneath the mask, Ethan Blackwood was a man deeply, irrevocably in love, and he wasn't afraid to show it. Chapter 5. Forever Ours. The early morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of their bedroom, casting a golden glow across the room. Adrian stirred awake, the warmth of Ethan's arms wrapped tightly around him. It was a rare moment. Ethan usually woke before him, already buried in his work. But today it seemed the world had slowed just for them. Adrian smiled softly as he turned to face Ethan. His husband's sharp features relaxed in sleep. The man who commanded boardrooms and struck fear into his competitors now clung to Adrian like a lifeline. Adrian couldn't help but marvel at how different Ethan was with him. A softness and vulnerability that no one else would ever see on. As if sensing Adrian's gaze, Ethan's eyes fluttered open. His dark eyes met Adrian's, and a small, genuine smile graced his lips. "Morning," Ethan murmured, his voice still husky with sleep. "Morning," Adrian replied, leaning in to press a soft kiss to Ethan's lips. "You're still here. I thought work would have stolen you already." Ethan tightened his hold, pulling Adrian closer. "Not today. Today it's just us." Adrian chuckled, resting his head against Ethan's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "You say that now, but I know how your phone likes to interrupt our moments." "Not this time," Ethan said firmly. "I've cleared my schedule. No calls, no meetings. Just you, me, and—" His hand slid down to rest gently on Adrian's growing belly. "Our future." Adrian's heart swelled at the gesture. Ethan had been a constant force of support since they learned about the pregnancy, but moments like these reminded him just how deeply Ethan cared. "You've been so protective lately," Adrian teased, though his voice was filled with affection. Ethan's gaze darkened slightly, a flicker of possessiveness crossing his features. "I have to be. You and our child are my world, Adrian. I won't let anything or anyone threaten that." Adrian reached up, cupping Ethan's cheek. "You don't have to worry so much. We're safe here with you. I trust you, Ethan." Ethan leaned into the touch, his eyes softening. "I know, but I can't help it. You mean everything to me, Adrian. Both of you do." Adrian smiled, his fingers brushing lightly over Ethan's. "We love you too, Ethan. Always." Later that day, the couple found themselves in the nursery, putting the final touches on the room. The soft hues of cream and pastel blue gave the space a calming atmosphere, and the small crib in the corner made everything feel real. Ethan stood back, his arms crossed as he surveyed the room. Adrian watched him, noticing the way his expression shifted from stern concentration to quiet pride. "You like it?" Adrian asked, stepping closer. Ethan turned to him, his gaze softening. "It's perfect, just like you." Adrian laughed, rolling his eyes. "I'm far from perfect, Ethan." Ethan caught Adrian's hand, pulling him close. "You're perfect to me," he said, his voice low and unwavering. "You've given me something I never thought I'd have. A family. How could I see you as anything less?" Adrian's throat tightened with emotion, and he leaned into Ethan's embrace. "You've given me the same, Ethan. I never thought I'd find someone like you." Ethan kissed Adrian's forehead, his arms wrapping around him protectively. "You're mine, Adrian. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving how much you mean to me." As they stood there, surrounded by the warmth of their shared love and the promise of their growing family, Adrian couldn't help but feel a sense of completeness. That night, as they lay in bed, Adrian rested his head against Ethan's chest, their fingers intertwined. The quiet hum of the city outside served as a backdrop to their whispered words. "Do you think we're ready for this?" Adrian asked softly, his hand resting over Ethan's. Ethan didn't hesitate. "I don't think, Adrian, I know. We'll be ready because we'll have each other." Adrian smiled, letting the warmth of Ethan's words wash over him. "You always know what to say." Ethan kissed the top of Adrian's head, his voice a soft promise. "Because I mean every word. You, me, and our child. We're forever, Adrian. Nothing will ever change that." And as they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, they knew that no matter what challenges the world might throw their way, they would face them together. Their love was unshakable, their bond unbreakable, forever was theirs. Epilogue: The Blackwood Legacy. The Blackwood estate was lively, with the sound of laughter and the pitter-patter of tiny feet running across the polished wooden floors. The once immaculate hallways were now scattered with toys, drawings, and the occasional stuffed animal. Adrian stood in the living room, smiling as he watched their twin children, Liam and Elise, playfully chase each other. At 4 years old, they were already showing signs of their unique heritage. Liam, with his jet-black hair and sharp, calculating eyes, was the spitting image of Ethan. Even at such a young age, he exuded an air of quiet authority that often left Adrian shaking his head in amusement. Elise, on the other hand, was a bundle of energy with her mother's warm smile and sharp wit. Her silvery gray eyes sparkled with mischief as she tackled her brother to the floor, giggling. "Careful, Elise," Adrian called, though he couldn't suppress his own laughter as Liam retaliated with a dramatic flop to the ground, declaring, "I give up." "Training them for corporate takeovers already?" Ethan's deep voice came from behind Adrian, laced with amusement. Adrian turned to find his husband standing in the doorway, arms crossed, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Ethan was dressed casually, something he reserved only for family days, and the sight never failed to make Adrian's heart skip a beat. "They're a little young for boardrooms," Adrian teased, walking over to him, "but they've definitely inherited your dramatic flair." Ethan chuckled, wrapping an arm around Adrian's waist and pulling him close. "And Elise has your determination. She'll be running circles around Liam and me in no time." Adrian leaned into Ethan, savoring the warmth of his embrace. "She already does, and don't think I haven't noticed how she has you wrapped around her little finger." Ethan smirked, unrepentant. "She's my daughter. She deserves the world." "And what about Liam?" Adrian asked, arching a brow. Ethan's gaze softened as he looked at their son, who had now taken a seat on the floor to inspect a toy car. "He's going to be unstoppable, just like his parents." Adrian laughed, resting his head against Ethan's shoulder. "You're impossible, you know that?" "Only for you," Ethan replied, kissing Adrian's temple. Later that evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. The twins chattered excitedly about their day, their voices overlapping as they recounted their imaginary adventures. Adrian listened with a fond smile, occasionally glancing at Ethan, who was watching their children with an expression of quiet pride. As Elise reached for another piece of bread, Ethan raised a brow. "Elise, what do we say?" "Please," she chirped, flashing him an innocent smile. Ethan nodded approvingly before handing her the bread. Adrian bit back a laugh, marveling at how easily Ethan had transitioned from the cold, emotionless CEO to a doting father. After dinner, Ethan carried a sleepy Liam upstairs, while Adrian tucked Elise into bed. As he smoothed the blankets over her, Elise reached out to grab his hand. "Daddy," she murmured, her silvery eyes blinking up at him. "Yes, sweetheart?" Adrian replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Do you think I'll be strong like Papa one day?" she asked softly. Adrian's heart swelled, and he leaned down to kiss her forehead. "You're already strong, Elise, and you'll only grow stronger. Just remember, strength isn't just about being tough. It's about being kind, too." Elise nodded sleepily, her eyes fluttering shut. "I'll be strong and kind, like you and Papa." Adrian stayed by her side until her breathing evened out, then quietly left the room. In their bedroom, Adrian found Ethan sitting by the window, gazing out at the city lights. He approached quietly, wrapping his arms around Ethan's shoulders from behind. "They're asleep," Adrian said softly. Ethan reached up, resting a hand over Adrian's. "You've given me everything I didn't know I needed," he murmured, his voice filled with emotion. Adrian smiled, pressing a kiss to Ethan's temple. "We've built this life together, Ethan. You gave me everything, too." Ethan turned to face him, pulling Adrian into his lap. "You, Liam, Elise, you're my world, Adrian. Everything I do, everything I am is for you." Adrian cupped Ethan's face, his heart overflowing with love. "And we'll always be here, Ethan. Forever." As they sat together wrapped in each other's warmth, Adrian knew that their story was far from over. There would be challenges, yes, but there would also be love, an unbreakable bond that would carry them through anything. They were a family, a legacy, and they were unshakably, irrevocably happy.